This is big pressure. Wondering what Liège-Bastogne-Liège will hold in store for them today. Also, the champion of Poland riding for the Omega Pharma Quick-Step, Michael Kwiatkowski. He's an outsider on many people's lips. Former winner Maxim Igliski of Team Astana. And, of course, the crowd favourite, Thomas Vogler, the red, white and blue, indicating a former champion of France. And how about this for an outsider? Vincenzo Nibali showed very good form of late. And the previous winner of last year, Dan Martin, who rode exceptionally well a little earlier on in this week. Prince Philip of the Belgians will in fact travel out on the race route today as we get a chance to him seeing and waving away the official start of 197 riders as they move away from the Place, the newly renovated Place at Colombiere, which is right along the back of the 16th century palace of the bishops of Liège. The last Belgian to win, that was Philippe Gilbert back in 2011, and in that year he had an incredible goal race, the Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. But there are only 7 riders who've actually done the double of winning Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Gilbert obviously being one of those. Alejandro Valverde, Rebellin of Italy, Moreno Argentin, Eddy Merckx, Stan Ockers and Ferdy Kubler, the Swiss rider, did it on 2 occasions in 1951 and 1952. This is the climb of the Haute-Levée, and if you've ever ridden it, you remember this climb once you hit the bottom because of that big concrete separating wall down the middle of it. Narrows the road a fraction. Up at the front, Europe car, and that is Kevin Redzer right in the middle there in the white sunglasses, looking over his shoulder, thinking about Thomas Vogler, and of course Yukiya Arashiro, the Spanish national champion, the Japanese national champion, as Jesus Herrera, the Spanish national champion, seems to be struggling at the back a fraction. Maybe he's just going back. No, he's got a mechanical incident. You just saw the sign there from his hand. That was to indicate to the race referee that he's got a problem at the back end of his machine, and that was hopefully the race referee would be able to radio back to the team car so the mechanic is ready when he comes up alongside his rider. There's the world champion, number 41, Simon Gerrans, 71. Looks good, Gerrans, just over on the right hand side. Orica Green Edge, a bit further back, number 75 is Christian Meyer, Canadian rider on the Orica Green Edge squad. See a lot of riders going, now this is interesting because this is Joaquim Rodriguez. Now he is injured. We do know that he's had a couple of nasty accidents, one in the Amstel Gold Race and one in climb, and again getting himself team top sport. Goes through there, it's Jacobs, so he's having a good day out, Peter Jacobs, and that makes 5 out of 5 for him. He's the rider who wears number 182, top sport Vlaanderen. Jacobs, he's been professional for quite some time. In fact, he turned professional back in 2006 for a team called Unibet. Rode for Silence Lotto for a couple of seasons, and he's been on Top Sport Vlaanderen since 2010. But damage at the back, one of the pre-race possibles. Joaquim Rodriguez, you can see the little scrape on his elbow there. Wears number 11, the leader of his Katusha squad. If he's struggling here at the slopes of the Haute-Levée, that's not a good indication for the Spaniard. So we're saying, well, wow, what's going on here? Because we're in 217, just having a look. It's not often you see a top man like this, one of the pre-race favourites, really struggling. Purito, as they call him, looking down at his Canyon bike. He won the Tour of Catalonia this year, having led the race for 4 days. And as we start to see 1 or 2 little moves coming off the front of the peloton, I don't think we'll see very much more of Joaquim Rodriguez today. So race Race Radio is even announcing now that Rodriguez has been left behind as a small little group starts to scurry off the front end of the main field. Now there will be some reaction to this, and that will probably damn Joaquim Rodriguez to the back of the race. He turns 35 years of age in the early part of next month. Good start to the year with a win in the Tour of Catalonia. He's won 43 races, but he's had a very tough week in the Ardennes with that nasty crash. The first one in the Amstel Gold race, and then the other one, which was not less well on. In fact, it was only about 4 or 5 kilometers to go. And he said he thought that he might warm up a little bit, but he was having difficulty breathing because of those accidents. 12 is Michael Anderson. This is big pressure coming from Europcar. Now Europcar, obviously thinking about the man in second position there, Pierre Rolland. Great climber, Rolland, as a bit further back. Now this is Bacalans. Now he was involved in the crash. Now he probably wants to change where there's a lot of action coming on. That Sébastien Minard of AG2R. He too is looking for some assistance from the team car. Minard, been a professional since 2005. Now this is a big move here. As I said, this is a long climb. Pierre Rolland made any reaction at all. They're going through the feeding station. I think this is an unofficial feeding station over the top of Haute-Levée, because the real feeding 3 originally designed back in 1920, but the first race actually never took place on this circuit until many years. It's now a much smaller circuit than it used to be. The last time they had the Belgian Grand Prix on that course was in 2010, and in 1988 it was the home of a Mexican winner of a stage of the Tour de France, when Raúl Alcala. Van den Broek, hope for the Belgians, or one of the hopes for the Belgians. He was presented to the King of the Belgians this morning as Van den Broek was 7th in the Ruta del Sol last year, but in a nasty year he came out of the Tour with a win. Now Ramūnas Navadauskas. We mentioned earlier on a couple of riders who won the under-23 edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Well, this is one of them alongside young Bacalans. Now this is to toughen up the race for Garmin Sharp. Now Navadauskas is just putting the hammer down a little bit here if he can, just to see what sort of damage he can do. And he won the under-23 version of Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He's now 26 years of age. He won the Circuit of the Sarthe in the early part of this year, but you see the panic that these little attacks are putting on. You see how the road also continues to clamber up a fraction there as you look. It's certainly Race Radio getting very frantic now about all of the chaos going on at the back of the race. They've now got around about 15 kilometers before they get to the next big climb of the day, and that is the climb of the Côte de la Béquette, which has been brought back in. It's after they've gone through the feeding station at Staumont or La Glaise, and again it's almost like a little col, if you like. It's around about 3.5 kilometers long. A crash. There we go. That's the world champion down on the ground, number 41, Rui Costa. He's gone down there very, very hard indeed. Now he was riding at the front end of the main field. I wonder where that accident actually happened. Also gone down one of the Colombian riders, number 248, and that is André Torres. The other riders who go down there, it looked to me one of the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep. Just looking on the far side as well. It's the rider who went down there from Team Sky as well, but most importantly the world champion Rui Costa went down. Now all of this chaos is happening a little bit further back down the main field. Let's have a look at this. You see, it was actually halfway down the main field, and the rider went down there from from Team Sky. I think it was David Lopez. So 3 or 4 riders went down quite hard. Look at the chaos that an accident like that causes in the main field. When you look down, there's gaps appearing in the peloton. Everyone's looking around. They've heard the grinding of steel against the road. They know something has happened. They're looking back to see if any of their own teammates or leaders are involved in a problem like that. This is the left-hand turn now, as they turn away from the main road from the Haute-Levée now, as they circumnavigate the motor racing circuit of Francorchamps. So let's see what's going on here. Lots of accidents. Oh, there's a crash. There was a rider there, was up alongside his team car trying to get some help. It was an AG2R rider trying to get himself looked after by the team mechanic, and he's gone down very hard indeed. These are the moments, we're still looking at a good 2 hours to go to the finish, but these are the moments that lay down the foundations that can change the result of a race like this. The leading group of 5 riders, they're just minding their own business, riding through the Ardennes this afternoon, holding on to as much of their advantage as they can. They're now looking at 75 kilometers to go, and the 5 riders who at 75 kilometers to go still hold on to 5 minutes and 30 seconds. But the gap's plunging down now as we have another quick look at these riders. They escaped, just to remind you, after 12 kilometers of racing here this afternoon, and they built up a lead of almost 16 minutes. One man has disappeared from that leading group, Marco Minard, but the 5 who remain are Permin Lang, IAM Cycling, Michael Koch of Cannondale, Bono of Team Lampre, and Peter Jacobs of Top Sport Vlaanderen. So 75 kilometers to go. The big climb, the next big climb that they will all be thinking about is the Côte de la Vecchie. So that's 12 kilometers away from that climb for the leaders. Good to see Mick Rogers over on the left-hand side, riding his first race back after being exonerated of that positive test for clenbuterol, which was deemed was accidentally ingested from tainted beef, which he consumed while participating in the Tour of Beijing. We're hearing over race radio that Rui Costa has abandoned the race. So Rui Costa, the world champion, has abandoned because of that nasty crash. So he won't be getting the victory that he was dreaming of here this afternoon in the rainbow jersey. So there we are. There's confirmation in the 100th edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the abandon of the world champion Rui Costa. Over on the far side, the leader of 1T Group Colombiere, the Belgian rider Jérôme Bonny, number 231, just trying to stay in contact. Now you can start to see the shape of the Ardennes, the rolling hills of the Ardennes, as we make our way back up towards the north now and rejoin the Tête de la Course. Good to see this rider, Venter, South African rider, on MTN Quebec. Not worried at all by the reputations of many of these riders in this leading group with him. Happy to represent MTN Quebec at the front end of the race. So a little bit of calm now returning for the 5 leaders, taking on board drinks from the help of Team Mavic, keeping themselves topped up with fluids. Very important in a race like this, 263 kilometers. Around about 6.5 hours of racing we would expect on a day like this. And the gap down to 5 minutes. The sky's still looking as if there is not going to be any rain. It's some dark clouds starting to creep in. The crowds are also starting to build up here. There's lots of Belgian flags around as everybody wonders whether or not their man King Philippe Gilbert will be able to take the victory for King Philippe of the Belgians. So MTN Quebec have got a man in the breakaway, and there he is, just over on the left-hand side. Sponsored by Trek Bicycles, a nice yellow bike for Venter. He certainly hasn't missed any work in this leading group of 5 riders, which is we're inside of 5 minutes now. The motorbikes getting out of the way. So rather sad to see the abandon there of the world champion Rui Costa. That crash coming halfway down the main field. These crashes are because of the nervousness, because of the fatigue that's starting to creep into the riders. The last German rider, by the way, to win Liège-Bastogne-Liège was back in 1979, and that was Didi Tura. So there's the man who's been the most consistent, number 182 on the climbs. He was the first over Côte de la Roche, first over the Côte de Saint-Roch, the Côte de Wanne, Côte de Stocker and the Côte de Haute-Levée. Will he survive now, Peter Jacobs, to be the first man to go over the Côte de la Vecchie? Scuttling back, 203 is Iker Kamano of Team NetApp. This is the lull before the storm. Also, just caught a quick glimpse of one of the riders from Team Sky hanging out at the back, as I think the calm now starts to come into this race. A little indication there from Michael Rogers just to show there's a little bit of traffic furniture on the road furniture, which makes it very difficult and dangerous for professional bike riders all over the world these days. 71 kilometers, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. As we look at these live images of the 100th edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège as we go through the small town of Rouy. Next we'll go past the Moulin de Rouy, which is the windmill of Rouy, before coming down onto the main road again of the National 633 and into the town of L'Aglaise. And that's when we'll start to line ourselves up for the next big climb of the day, the Côte de la Vecchie. There's Richie Porte there sitting at the back. Now Richie Porte probably missing out on his mate who did not start this morning, Chris Froome, the Kenyan-born British rider who was hoping to ride well in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, and a number of people said, well, quite possibly Froome could be one of the surprise performers in this. But as they came out of the hotel this morning, we were told that in fact he's got a little bit of a chest infection, which he didn't want to aggravate because of the cold temperature here. It's dropped down to around about 12 degrees Celsius in the heart of the Ardennes. Just looking at BMC, it's Peter Velits who's sitting on the front there, stamping out the pace for Slovakia and Team BMC. For him, he's very concerned about doing as much work as possible for Philippe Gilbert. Steve Cummins, who did a lot of work in the first part of this race, has now disappeared. And I noticed a lot of riders in blue and white jerseys for Team Saxo Tinkoff have moved forward. And that's obviously for their man Roman Kreuziger, who was involved in an accident just a little bit earlier on, but they managed to get him safely back into the main field. Well, we're getting confirmation coming over race radio as well that in fact Joaquim Rodriguez has also pulled out of the race. So a number of pre-race big favourites are pulling out, one because of injuries from a previous race, of course is Joaquim Rodriguez, and Rui Costa because of an injury experienced here in this race. So rather sad to see the world champion having to pull out like that, as we're inside of 70 kilometers to go and inside of 5 minutes of racing left. Bit of a blow to the Lamprey squad, who've been dogged by injury in this early part of the year as well, because just on a training crash a little while back, Chris Horner, the winner of the Vuelta a España, was riding through a tunnel when somebody knocked him off his bike, and obviously he ended up in hospital in intensive care. Far side there, number 91, Bout Mollema. He could be the man to do it for that team a little bit later on. As I said, he placed well in the Amstel Gold Race, but look at the organisation now of Saxo Tinkoff. They don't want to do too much at this point, but watch out for a little move coming from them as we start to get a bit closer to the Côte de la Vecchie. Velits is the man on the front. Brilliant professional bike rider, Velits. Well, Well, as we mentioned earlier, Chris Froome didn't start the day, and neither too did Peter Kenyuk, which is a little bit of a surprise. And Richie Porte has been sitting quite happily at the back end of the field. Now, is he here for training, or is he here just to keep himself out of trouble? And if he feels good on the running towards a finish, come up towards the front of this race and have a little bit of a crack, because the decision is very often made on the Côte de la Roche au Faucon, the Rock of the Falcons. Before, Ryder Heyerdahl, also quite happy to sit at the back end of the pack. Orica Greenedge, Simon Clark going forward to answer a nature break. There is Van den Broek, 121. He was suffering. He was really in difficulty when he went over the top there of the climb of the Côte de Haute-Levée, but he's managed to drag himself back into the event. And there's Miguel Angel Rubiano over on the left-hand side, the Colombian rider. National Road Racing Champion, a title which he took just a couple of weeks ago. Lots of work being done now. 68 kilometers to go, 4:55. It seems to be locked in a bit now. They're no longer chasing as it was organized earlier on, but I think they're waiting for the next vital part of these few climbs that the race will throw up at them. So, Etienne Quebecer, happy to have a man in that leading group, I would suggest. And these men, they realise that once we start to get to the next few climbs, the next climbs on the horizon are going to be the Côte de la Vecchie, which is the 6th climb of the day, followed by the Côte de la Redoute, which is famous for every professional bike rider. They've seen it so many times on television, the approach through the town of Remouchon, and then the long ascent of 2.5 kilometres. Etienne Quebecer, not only, as we look here at when are riding not only in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but they've also got a very strong squad making a return to the Tour of Turkey, which is probably in the warmer climbs of this year's of this day's racing in Europe. A race that Mark Cavendish is actually part event to home his speed. He decided this year not to participate in the Giro d'Italia, leaving that to one side, feeling maybe that in the past it might have fatigued him a little bit leading up to his sprinting for the Tour de France, which is what's going to be his main goal for this season. So the climber at the end of this race is the one that everybody talks about, so the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, but not very many people talk about the final climb of the day, which is not actually a categorized climb. It's the climb up to the town of Ons, which is right nestled up against the motorway to Brussels. And that climb itself is a climb of around about 1.5 kilometers, and very often that's where the decision for the final victory comes out. But to get there, you've got to climb over the Côte de la Roche au Faucon first, followed by Saint-Nicolas, and then hopefully be in with a chance when it comes up to this final climb of the day up to Ons. And then once you turn left into the final 300 meters, it's actually completely flat, and that's when if you've got some sprinting ability, you've got to wait until the final moment. And that's how Dan Martin got himself the victory last year. Says Pierre Rolland in third position behind Velits. But certainly I have to say that Saxo Tinkoff are paying a great deal of attention here this afternoon. Rory Sutherland is riding the race for Saxo Tinkoff. I haven't spotted him so far, but he's never far away from doing plenty of work. Europcar have decided they're going to do some pacemaking, but the gap has suddenly crept up a fraction. Just looking there at Kevin Retzer, the rider in third position for Team Europcar. Although he lives in Versailles, he actually hails from the island of Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. As we continue now, the roads here in this part of Belgium are very, very good, as we get a chance here to see the difference in styles between the leading group of 5 on the left-hand side and the peloton on the right-hand side. Vellet's doing quite a lot of work. He's quite happy to do the pacemaker. They sacrificed in the first part of the race, they sacrificed Steve Cummings quite a bit. Peter Vellet's moving across. He's the national time trial champion of Slovakia, by the way, as opposed to the national road racing champion, who is Peter Sagan. He moved across from Omega Pharma Quick-Step during the winter transfer season to become an integral part of Team BMC. He's a solid worker. One of his great performances was he was the World Under-23 road racing champion back in 2007. And finished second overall in the Vuelta a España back in 2010. So the leaders now are on the Côte de la Veque, a climb of 3.1 kilometers, an average gradient of 6%. And it's on this climb a couple of years ago that Alexander Vinokourov went out to get himself a victory. Attacked on this climb with a certain Jens Voigt, the Jensi as they call him. So, as you can see, there's a little bit of a slowing in the peloton. A few riders scrambling at the back. The legs now starting to scream out for a little bit of respite, a little bit of rest. There is no rest in the Ardennes. These roads are now, from here right the way down towards the finish, are up and down for the whole of the afternoon. Europcar are doing a good job of work at the front. They obviously feel that their man Pierre Rolland has got very good legs. I wonder how Thomas Voeckler is feeling this afternoon. Voeckler has had a quiet start to the season with nothing really to shout home about, but Voeckler is pretty much not part of the main core of those Europcar riders we're looking at. Redza is in 3rd position. Pierre Rolland is in 5th position. Behind him, it's the other rider from Europcar is Peric Kemener, a real Breton name. As we start to look a little bit further back, Saxo Tinkoff or Tinkoff Saxo Bank are very present at the front end of the main field. There will be, the next big battle will start to come as we line up for the Côte de la Redoute. Everybody realizes that's the big battle. It's a long climb as well, long and steep. 2.5 kilometers at 7.5%. It goes up alongside the E25 motorway, which goes from Liège right the way down towards the area of Luxembourg, the Duchy of Luxembourg. Number 88, the Finnish national champion there on the FDJ squad in the white jersey with a blue stripe on it, the blue cross on it, and that's Jussi Väikkönen. FDJ, very much a French squad. The team manager, Frank Pinault, has got 7 French riders on the start line this morning, and Väikkönen, the sole foreigner creeping into the French squad. Just looking at the style here of coach number 154, it's starting to look a little bit more laboured now. This is the long climb. As you can see, it's a long but steady climb, the Côte de la Veque. It's been reintroduced this year, which is why a number of riders came down here to have a look. Most of the riders have stayed in this region for a good 10 days now, because they came up here, installed themselves, many in Holland for the Amstel Gold Race in the city of Maastricht on the Maas. Came to look at the course for the Flèche Wallonne, and also came to have a quick look at the circuit for Liège-Bastogne-Liège. 63 kilometers to go now, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Concentration now, a lot of riders moving forward in the light blue jerseys of Garmin Sharp. Looking around, Tony Martin is still there in the Omega Pharma Quick-Step jersey. Peter Vellet's in the red and black jersey. Kevin Redza is there for Europcar. Pierre Rolland is the 3rd place rider, looking very nervous as he battles to stay in the front end of the main field. They now know that once they come into this little town here, this is the town of Stormont, they take this right-hand turn, there it is, and now they start the climb of the Côte de la Veque. There it is. If you go straight on, in fact, you carry on down the road towards the town of Remouchon, and that is where we will find, in about 20 minutes' time, the Côte de la Redoute. Just look at how much that gap has dropped down as well there. It's dropped down pretty dramatically there to around about 4 minutes. Just on the right hand side there is the Colombian rider on Team BMC, and that's John Atapuma. Good man to bring onto the squad for a little bit later on as well. Back of the main field, Vaikkonen just struggling a little bit. He wants to stay in contact with this peloton. This is when the decanting process starts. The riders with the slightly weaker legs slowly start to slip to the back end of the main field. No more energy left to fight and get back up towards the top end of the sharp end of the peloton. Mick Rogers there looking quite comfortable for his first race back. Must have been a long, hard psychological winter for Mick Rogers. Wondering how the Court of Arbitration were going to respond to that positive test for clenbuterol in the Japan Cup. But eventually in fact, rather strange, because the International Cycling Union warned riders not to eat meat when they went to the Tour of Beijing because of the possibility of tainting it with clenbuterol. And I think they made the right decision where Mick Rogers was concerned, and he's very happy now to be back and racing, getting himself in form and ready for a big attack on the Tour de France later on in the year. Rui Costa crashed out and quit the race. Abrasions and bruising to his shoulder is being announced on race radio, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that later on. So it's bad luck. There's Rory Sutherland. We'll be looking for him for a while. He's the big Tinkoff-Saxo rider just in the middle of the group there. He'd be looking after Roman Kreuziger. He was delayed a little earlier on by a crash of the Czech rider, but I don't think he was injured by that, and he was quickly helped and escorted back into the main field by his team. Look at 500 meters to go to the summit of the Côte de la Vecchie. Now, one rider has won all 5 summits we've been over so far, and that's Peter Jacobs. He's currently sitting in 3rd position. Yes, the Belgians are all out to support the race this afternoon. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, the oldest professional bike race on the calendar, 1892, first organised. There's Sutherland. This rider coming through there for Europcar is Kemener. That's next rider through, Pierre Roland, 196, Kevin Rezza. 2002, Cesare Benedetti. Lots of nervousness now. The Trek factory racing rider moving forward. Wondering whether or not there's going to be any performance from Frank Schleck this afternoon. That was Bob Jungels. 3 riders from Luxembourg on that squad, Frank and Andy Schleck and Bob Jungels, who is the national champion. As we go back with the lead of 3.5 minutes, it's really now starting to crumble, that advantage that these riders had, which at one stage was up in the 16-minute margin. A pity Carlos Betancourt was not here at the start this morning, the Colombian rider on AG2R. He, like Chris Froome, pulling out on the start date, and rumours coming to us, and there's no way of being absolutely certain, but we are told that he actually attended the team meeting in the team bus this morning and didn't come out because he could felt that bit of tickling on his shoulder. The fact that it was 12 to 14 degrees Celsius, he decided he was not going to come out and ride the race. Kreuziger, former winner of the Amstel Gold Race, so he's the rider who's got the right skills. Is Anke Sorensen with the yellow and the speed, riding in excess of 30 kilometers an hour on the slopes of this climb, which is, as I said, a 3.5 kilometer climb at around about 6% the average gradient. But this is serious stuff now that Mickey Rogers is starting to dish out. Louis Menches at the back of the group. Daniel Teclamanot of Eritrea is also starting to struggle a bit, but at least MTN Quebec from South Africa have got a rider in that leading 5-man breakaway. He's been there right from the 12th kilometre of the race. So 2 Australians now starting to really turn up the screws. It's good to see Mick Rogers is back. As I say, it must have been a very difficult psychological winter for Mick Rogers, wondering wouldn't he be allowed to come back into the sport. And I think finally we've seen that decision is right, as got another Australian up alongside him, and they really are, look at that, they really are putting some pressure on the front end of that main field. It's inside of 3 minutes. That's about 2 minutes wiped away by the two Australians, Sutherland and Mickey Rogers. This is their prey, but I don't think they're too worried about that. I think the two Aussies at the front of the main field, what they're doing currently, putting the pressure on, making it more difficult in the main field, setting up the foundations for a move to come a little bit later on from their man Roman Kreuziger, who, as we saw earlier, was involved in a little bit of a crash, delayed by the crash, but fought himself back into the main field. That was around about the Côte d'Oine. No panic. Look at this, Rogers. He's in the white sunglasses, looks over, he looks calm as a cucumber, as they would say in English. Looks across at his teammate there. They're just chatting away, but they are having a serious effect on the front end of this race. The leading group of five are now inside of the 3 minute margin. 3 times a world champion, Mick Rogers. I think he would have had the yellow jersey in the Tour de France a number of years ago if he hadn't crashed out and broken his collarbone, tried to carry on, but just could not continue with a broken collarbone. He's taken a back seat now, but he's gone back to have a quick chat with his teammate Rory Sutherland, who's the 3rd place rider from Tinkoff Saxo. But the one man, if we're talking about shouting or waving the flag for Australia, I think the Australians would wave the flag for Simon Gerrans. Orica Greenwich, I think, were very clever in their preparation for this race. They saw how Gerrans rode in the Amstel Gold Race just a little while ago, just last week on Sunday, and they said, no, we're not going to put you. There's Gerrans over on the right-hand side, as if on cue. You can see the yellow shoulders on his jersey there, sitting on the wheel of Philippe Gilbert. Now, he didn't ride the midweek race at Flèche-Wallonne. Philippe Gilbert rode the race, but I don't think it dug too deep into his reserves. They were all holding something back for this event. So watch out for Simon Gerrans. This is an ideal kind of race for him. So we'll talk about Gerrans a little bit later on. So as we start to rejoin the leaders, and I have to say, nice to see South Africans present with Etienne Kebeke as their team, but also Jacobus Ventner also in that leading group for Etienne Kebeke. There's a lot of riders from that squad having a tough time at the back. It's difficult when you're a team trying to break through. You get selected for a top race like the Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but you also want to put your good team into a race like the Tour of Turkey, which is over on the far side of Europe just now. Long line of the main peloton now as it starts to stretch out. We're now at 56 kilometers to go, and that puts us 12 kilometers, 10 kilometers, shall I say, from the start of the Côte de la Redoute. You'll start to see some serious action now starting to take place as all of the teams try to place their riders in a nice position to start the Côte de la Redoute, a climb that Philippe Gilbert really does like. It's just down the road from his house, Remouchon. He was actually born in Verviers, which is not too far away from Liège, but he regards Remouchon as being home ground and home turf now. Peter Belletz has slipped down towards the back. BMC here, BMC looking after their leader Philippe Gilbert, while on the other side of Europe this week, one Australian's had an excellent week of racing, and that of course is Cadel Evans coming out with a victory, put into a great position by his team, who dominated the team time trial in the Giro del Trentino, and Cadel then took the overall lead and never looked back after that. 46 kilometers to go, so 6 kilometers for the leading group of 5 riders to the start of the Côte de la Redoute. And the race organisation, who were pulling all the cars out of that gap a few moments ago, could very well be quite right there, because they didn't want any cars in the gap as we started to approach the Côte de la Redoute. There's the Eritrean rider just sitting down towards the back there, Daniel Tekla Hamonot, 226. Interesting story, because in fact the rider from Eritrea was invited to Aigle which is not too far from Geneva or Lausanne, which is the headquarters of the World Cycling Union, the Union Cycliste Internationale, and he was part of the development squad for international cyclists, and he improved over the years to get himself a position on an international team with MTN Quebec. He's a very good rider. He rode a season or two ago for Orica Green Edge, but I think now it's taken a little while for him to start to develop, but here he is riding right at the top of his game in a race like Liège-Bastogne-Liège. More respite. Mick Rogers in the middle with the white sunglasses. Tony Martin over to the left-hand side. Two brilliant World Time Trial Championship champion. Oh, there's Dan Martin now. He's the third place rider in the Garmin Sharp colours there. You can see these riders now getting that little bit nervous as they start to realise, yep, this is the moment. This is the time when we're going to start to line ourselves up for the Côte de la Redoute. Famous climb. Scary climb if you're not a climber, because although it says it's 7.5% average for 2.3 kilometers, well, it really is a little bit nasty. Around the corners it gets to 15 and 16%. We're talking a little bit about the Tour of Turkey, which took place today, a circuit race around Alanya, 140 kilometers. Well, the winner, this may well be good news for the riders from Omega Pharma Quickstep. In fact, it was Mark Cavendish who's got his season back on track, winning the opening stage of the Presidential Tour of Turkey ahead of Elia Viviani and Theo Bos of Team Belkin. So Cavendish has gone down there, and he's hoping that that will set him up for a good Tour de France this year. The Château de Haut-Regard, a high look, is what that means when it's translated. And there's a beautiful H hedge right in the middle of the chateau grounds. It's now a fully functioning farm, and as you can see, the main field not taking any notice of it at all as they wing their way by. It's 50 kilometers now to go to the finish. About an hour and 15 minutes, 2.5 minutes. That's not a very big main field. .2:35. So obviously, as we look there, there's the South African national champion just sitting in the back there, Louis Menches, getting a taste of the big time here. Nice to see the South African national champion's jersey. There's Garmin, that's Romanas Novadauskas. He's the rider from Lithuania, former winner of the under-23 version of this event. Pierre Roland is the rider from Europcar in third position. Lots of nervousness now. Now's the time when there's going to be a big battle for positions. The dark blue jerseys and the lime green, Movistar, looking around their shoulders, looking for Alejandro Valverde. Cofidis also trying to keep their men up towards the front end of this pack. This is not the moment to think about touching your brakes. At a moment like this, you touch your brakes in this line of riders, you'll drop back 15 or 20 positions, having battled and used so much energy to be in the top 14 or 15 places. All of a sudden, you've wasted all that energy and you've got to do it all once again. Down the descent now. 48 kilometers to go, about 3 or 4 kilometers to Remouchon, across the town, over the bridge, over the river, and then through the little neighborhood, and that's when the Côte de la Redoute starts. Michael Koch coming through there for Cannondale in the lime green. Birman Lang of IAM Cycling in the blue, black and red. You just might have seen 72 kilometers an hour. You see they're quite banging on down this descent as they come away from the little plateau, the main field, and not too far back after either 2.5 minutes. That's around about 1.5 kilometers in actual distance between the leading group of 5 and the main field, which is not a lot of riders, not many of the 197 riders who actually started this race. We've been through Bastogne in the heart of the province of Luxembourg. We've been right the way through the hilly part. We've been over the first 6 climbs of the day: the Côte de la Roche, Santa Roche, Wanne, Stokke, Haute-Levée, Côte de la Vecque, and now we're just crossing the river. This is a sight to sore eyes. The race referees at red car now being pulled out of the gap. These 5 won't have to battle for position as they start the Côte de la Redoute, because they will be able to pick their way through the crowds, but behind there will be a serious battle to try and find a good position for the start of the Côte de la Redoute. Round the roundabout, through the neighbourhood, these roads known extremely well to Philippe Gilbert, and I'm sure once we get to the slopes of the climb you'll start to see written from the bottom right the way to the top, Phil, Phil, Phil. Phil is not for le King Philippe of the Belgians, but for Philippe Gilbert. Left-hander, a little bit further on a right-hander. As they make their way through these few last little townhouses, they will then open up into the fields, and that's when the Côte de la Redoute will start. 2.5 minutes is still the advantage. Oh. These riders have led this race since the 12th kilometre. They built a lead of 16 minutes at one stage, and now they've seen it crumble to just 2 minutes and 20 seconds. They know what it's going to be like. It's going to be crazy once they get onto the slopes of this climb. As I said, the 7.5%. Horrible climb, actually, because it's one of those climbs, it's as if you've taken a high lift jack. It starts off with a nice steady gradient, and as you get higher up towards the summit, it's as if somebody's jacked it up. It gets steeper and steeper. Then once over the top, you're out into the area of the fields where there is no trees left to protect you from the wind, which then begins to batter you. 2 kilometres to go, 8.9%. The town of Remouchon, to see if we can see. There are the lead motorbikes. A quick look there at the Château de Montjardin, the mountain of the garden. There's the main field, pulling out all the stops now this afternoon. They'll all be getting motivated, all be getting concentrated over this bridge. They've been over it many times before. They've done it this week in training. A little bit further up, you'll have a chance to look over to the right-hand side. There you can just about see the motorway. But by the way, that really is a motorway, an expressway, if you like. You're not supposed to stop your cars on there, but today it is a parking lot. It's a car park. It is full of spectators who have come out to see this race this afternoon. Starting to struggle a little bit, Michael Koch of Team Cannondale. Team Sky supported there over the right-hand side. That's simply the best. Well, it wasn't a great day for Chris Froome, the winner of the Tour de France last year, who was not able to come out, suffering from a slight chest infection. It may well be that the Côte de la Redoute is one climb a little bit too far for the 22-year-old German rider who slips away from this lead route. Now down to 4 men. 2 minutes is the gap. We've just gone through the small town of Sounier-Remouchon, which is the village where Philippe Gilbert now calls home, as we look at Tony Martin on the right-hand side. Look at the difference in the speed. The leading group of 4, their gap now is inside of 2 minutes. Tony Martin trying to set it up for his man. He'll be third in the line, the red and white jersey, the Polish national champion, Kwiatkowski. Also, the Belkin riders in the lime green. They'll be looking after Wout Mollema. Kwiatkowski having a quick chat with his teammate there, looking very calm. On the right-hand side is Pierre Rolland. Lots of chatting going on here. It's inside of 2 minutes. They've got around about 2 kilometres now to go to the top of the climb themselves. Koch is there. He cannot stay in contact with these riders, and the problem is it's one of those nasty climbs. Once you get over the top, you can't accelerate anymore because it's a false flat. I told you that would what we'd see, and there it is. Phil. And of course that's Philippe Gilbert. Pierre Rolland in the middle, the dark green jersey of Europcar. Kwiatkowski. There is Thomas Voeckler now, bobbing away over on the left-hand side. Tony Martin is the rider on the front. Dark glances, hiding his eyes, but the concentration is there. He knows he's got to keep this pressure going. It's a tough old climb, this one. Crowds being kept back by the barriers. We get to the top, plenty of black, yellow and red, the flag of Belgium. The next man to succumb to the pace here on the slopes of the Côte de la Redoute is the rider from IAM Cycling, Purmin Lang. The Swiss rider slowly slipping away. Then there were three. It's Matteo Bono on the front, the Italian rider on Team Lampre. He's got the legs. He will have ridden this climb this week in training. Nice to see that the South African rider is still in contact. Slipping away, the man who's been the most consistent on the climbs now, 182, Peter Jacobs. Well, as the main field, they are taking this climb in their stride. Still, Tony Martin, first position. Pierre Rolland in third position in the dark green jersey. Nope. Down to 2. Or is it down to 1? It looks like that go over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. There's been no major reaction, though, in the main field. Tony Martin, well, there can't really be much of a movement when Tony Martin sets the tempo on the front, because he'll set a tempo that is just so difficult that nobody will be able to attack. Well, look at the gap. 1 minute and 40 seconds. Nathan Haas is the rider now in the middle. Just over to the left-hand side, the other rider from Garmin Sharp is last year's winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Dan Martin. Just sitting there, and his teammates to do the pacemaking. Life at the back. A nice place to be. Number 68, Peter Velets, he did a lot of work. The leader now, who leads this race with 44 kilometers to go. Matteo Bono really has plummeted quite a lot. Bono, the peloton is at 1 minute 30. Now there's a move coming. Now this is the man that I talked about earlier on in the race. This is Warren Borghia. He rides for Giant Shimano. He's a great rider, rode exceptionally well. I suppose you could say it was a discovery last year of the Vuelta a España. He won 2 stages in the Tour of Spain last year, stages 13 and 16. And hello, he's 21 years of age. He's a youngster, a new man on the block for France. He's not scared of the Côte de la Redoute, and bang, there he comes straight out of the pack. Everybody else surviving there. Carsten Kroon, 114, Saxo Tinkoff at the back of the group, but the front is where the action is. 2013 Vuelta stage winner, not scared of the big mountains. There is the man from Cannondale. He's struggling the gap, minute 30. You can see the motorway in the bottom there. That's the motorway that takes the riders from Liège right the way down to Luxembourg. Now, in the main field, they've allowed that acceleration to go. There's a move coming. No. Now the big accelerations are starting to come. No, they've actually reacted to that move by the Frenchman Bargoy. They've realized that he has got great climbing legs, and there is a reaction now starting to come behind. Now, Valverde is right up there. So now you can start to see this is interesting move now as we head over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. The accelerations are starting to come, and 164 is Tony Martin. Job done for the day. He can take a back seat and find the shortest direction back to Liège, quite possibly, here this afternoon. Now, this is Arredondo, the rider in second or third position for Trek Factory Racing. He's a Colombian rider on that squad. Looking over the shoulder, Bargoy saying, come on lads, this is a good move here. Let's not take advantage of the moves that's going to come from riders like Philippe Gilbert. We will do our own tactics here this afternoon. Second place rider on the road. This is the rider who rides for MTN Quebeca. It's Jacobus Venter, and he's just about to make the junction with the lone leader now, Matteo Bono. That makes it 2 men at the front. They're over the top now of the Côte de la Redoute. They'll get themselves back onto the main road shortly with a right-hand turn, but they've only got 1 minute and 22 seconds over the front end of the peloton. So 2 men lead the race. The race referee in the red car is pulling in behind the leaders. That means they've got more than 30 seconds over the chasers. Well, Jacobs is in third place on the road at around about 20 seconds. Here he is, 182, trying to keep himself in contact in this race. Number 154, Coach, is a little bit further back. And so 131, Warren Barguil is the rider in the black and white jersey. And the next rider in there, Omega Pharma Quickstop, is Jan Bakelands. And Arredondo is in there for Colombiere, but the main field are not very far behind. It just goes to show the youngsters in this race don't have any fear of the reputations of the big men. Look at that long line of the main field now as they're stretched out, everybody over to the right-hand side. The wind is obviously coming from the left, pushing the riders right up against the edge of the road. 1:17. 40 kilometers to go very shortly once we turn onto the main road over the summit of the Côte de la Redoute and start to come into the small town of Esprimont as we head then down towards the Côte de Forges. Now looking back, you can see the peloton stretched out across the road. They know they've pretty much got their prey in their sights, in the crosswire as they start to spread out. They know now that there's an hour of racing left, but in that last hour of racing there are 3 climbs. I would say there are 4 climbs really, because we've got Côte de Forges, the Côte de Rochefaucon, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and the final climb of the day, the climb up here to the town of Ans. Trying to keep it going, but not going anywhere at all. 2 leaders then. The 2 men who were in that leading breakaway. One of them is Matteo Bono, joined by Jacobus Venter of Team MTN Quebec. Scrambling a little bit over on the right hand side. This is the third place rider on the road, 182. I think he's realized now he's not going to get across. When we look at the Tête de la Course on the left hand side, we've got a South African leading Liège-Bastogne-Liège at 41 kilometers to go. 1:15 seconds is his lead. That's around about a kilometer on the road between the leading 2 riders and the peloton. And look how much that race has been broken up once again by the Côte de la Redoute. That's the right-hand turn onto the main road. 1:13. Jacobs is at 30 seconds. He's halfway across the gap, so 500 meters between him and the leading 2, and then 500 meters back to the main peloton. The organisation with this Côte de Forges have made it a very difficult approach to the Côte de Rochefaucon. It's Orica Greenedge coming to the front, looking over their shoulders, looking to figure out whether or not they're going to get some assistance. Now this is the 2 leaders, Bono. Well, this is 3rd and 4th on the road. In fact, this is IAM Cycling, and this is Lang, who's joined up with Jacobs. They're at 3rd and 4th on the road, not much further than 30 seconds. But every time we go around these corners in the town of Esprimont, you're hoping as a rider in this move that you can see the 2 riders in front. These are the 2 leaders now. Bono in the purple and blue jersey of Lampre. Venter of MTN Quebec, riding a very good race. Bear in mind, these riders have been at the front of this race since 10 o'clock this morning. They've been in the saddle for almost 6 hours of racing, and still they've got energy to keep pounding away to conserve a little bit of their advantage. Bakelands was quite aggressive going across that gap there with Warren Barguil, the young Frenchman, 21 years of age, on the giant Shimano squad. As we look now at 2nd and 3rd on the road, about 500 meters separating them from the front end of the peloton. Race time, about 5 hours and 45 minutes. Around about 1 hour to go as we look at the 2 leaders on the left-hand side. They've gone through the town of Esprimont. Now into the small town of Teux. We're in the region of Teux, and we'll be lining up very, very quickly in about 7 kilometers time for the Côte de Forges. Lots of moves now, lots of little trying attacks to see if everybody's got the power. down that line to see if I can spot Simon Gerrans. He was in a good position coming into the start of the Côte de la Redoute. Dark green jersey there is Pierre Roland. 45 seconds. The two chasers will very shortly get picked up by the main field. That's only 20 seconds. That's around about 300 meters separating the two chasers who are in second and third and fourth position. Jacobs and Lang. Very shortly that what remains of the main peloton there will start to see the two chasers, but the leaders are still holding on to in excess of 1 minute. Now the next climb there you can see the deviation of all the motorbikes coming up to get in behind the race once again. The race organisation don't like all the motorbikes to go down these narrow roads, so every now and again there's a deviation for them to catch up and get behind the race. Big power now at 38 kilometers to go. So the two leaders, Bono and Venter, looking at 1 minute and 10 seconds, and it won't be long between the third and fourth riders on the road get picked up by the front end of the main field. So very good move, though, I have to say, over the top of the Côte de la Redoute by Bargoy and Bacalans. Just goes to show that they were ready for that move as they went over the top, but now it's Orica Green Edge moving to there's Simon Gerrans, number 71, lightening his load, getting rid of that bottle. He's got a couple of teammates still in the race with him, so that's important when you come into the final part of this race. There's a lot of riders there from Movistar looking after Alejandro Valverde. The national champion of Spain is still there, Jesus Herrada. And these are the chasers. There's a quick look there at the rider from IAM, that's Lang. Again, this will be a little quiet before the storm. The climb of Côte de Forges, again, is quite a long climb. It's a straight climb. It's a former Roman road, straight as a die. It's a horrible climb because you hit it with a little bit of impetus, but then once you get part way up the climb, you lose that momentum, and then you've got to start to battle with the gradient. BMC, lots of confidence for them, and Philippe Gilbert, they realise that this is a good chance for him. Sammy Sanchez was in difficulty a little bit earlier on. I'd expected to see a good ride by Sammy Sanchez, the former Olympic champion who rides for BMC, was picked up just down towards the end of the transfer season when his team Muscatel Euskadi didn't continue in their sponsorship. So it's half a minute now is the gap to the two chasers, so they are recovering a fraction, but the gap between the leading two and the peloton is down to around about the 1 minute mark. There's going to be some serious moves, I would say, once we come to the climb of the Roche au Faucon, but to get there we've got a nasty little climb that's been put in called the Côte de Forges, 231 kilometers covered. Once we go over the Côte de Forges, we're looking at 31 kilometers or 40 minutes of racing to go to the finish. Oop, there we go. Those are the two riders caught halfway across the gap. 103 is the Australian rider on Team Sky, Nathan Earl. These two, I think they're about to raise the white flag now. They know they're not going to ride across the two leaders, and the better part of Fallon now would be to raise that flag, try and get a little bit of rest in the main field, and hope to finish the long escapade they started after just 12 kilometers of racing. That was as the race came away from Liège. 10:15 this morning, the race pulled out of the Place Lambert, just outside of the 16th century Palais of the Bishops of Liège. The Prince Évêque now turning off the main road. This is the little road now to go and find the Côte de Forges. The gap is still not very much at all. Well, Venter and Bono are still holding on, bravely holding on, I would say, to in excess of the 1 minute margin over the front end of the main field. But they know that very shortly that peloton is going to start to turn up some screws as they get to the Côte de Forges. Then the Côte de Roche au Faucon, which is a narrow climb, very steep. It's actually been resurfaced over the last 12 months. As we get a chance, the two leaders, you can see them just around the corner there, just in front of that motorbike. Their gap is about 5 or 6 seconds over the front end of the peloton. Bacalance, as I said earlier, the rider who attacked over the top of the Côte de la Redoute, a former winner of the under-23 edition of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, back now with Bono and Venter. South African rider wearing number 228 of Team MTN Quebec. They've survived a very long day, almost 6 hours in the saddle for these two riders, as the two chasers now are getting picked up by the main field. The narrow little road there is that common E25 and motorway just in the background there. And that's not a very large main field. So, just looking to see which teams are trying to control the front end of this. The next most important thing, I don't think we'll see a move coming on the Côte de Forges, but we'll see a number of teams of the big guys who want to win this race overall, trying to place their riders towards the front end of this peloton, so they're in a good position once they come to the Côte de Roche au Faucon. Just down there, again, an operational farm. Nice little tennis court down in the back, and of course a swimming pool, which everybody needs at this time of the year, at a nice 12 degrees Celsius here in the heart of the Ardennes. Peloton has stretched out into a very long line now, 33 kilometers. You can see the two leaders, or the two riders who are halfway across the gap, slipping down the main field, looking for their mates. Have a quick chat. Where have you been all day? Well, sorry, mate, I've been in the breakaway since this morning. Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Ventnor and Bono are still leading. 1892 this event was organised for the first time. This is the 100th edition of Ventnor now. Looks to be paying for that long day at the head of the event as he starts to suffer a little bit. There's the flag of the Wallonie just over on the right hand side. The cock on it, on that yellow flag. He's got his radio in there to get information. He cannot stay with Bono. Bono says, mate, I'm off. I can't wait for you any longer. I've got to see what I can do in a situation like this. So Matteo Bono now of Lampre and Italy is the last survivor. Now he's starting to open up a serious little gap. Matteo Bono, there is the main field, a hairpin turn for them. There's not very many more than about 60 riders left in that group from the 197 starters. There's Gilbert. Nervous over on the right-hand side. Marcus Burkhardt in the lime green shoes for BMC, also looking after his teammate, making sure he keeps him up to the front. These are the moments now when everybody's starting to wonder what's going to happen. That's Portuguese rider Nelson Simões from Lampre, who was doing a little bit of the pacemaking. There's Kwiatkowski there in the white jersey with the red band around the middle, a national champion of Poland. Also over on the left-hand side, the Luxembourg national champion as well, riding for Trek Factory Racing. That's Bob Jungels. He's a good rider who could put a special move in down towards the end. Matteo Bono is not losing very much time here, but now he's on his own as we come down to around about 32 kilometers to go. So 32 Ks to go for the one lone leader, and he's got 57 seconds over the peloton. Formerly South African national champion, the first African ever to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, gifted to him by his teammate Simon Gerrans. They're all paying now, aren't they? They're popping one at a time. Marcus Burkhardt over on the far side with those lime green shoes of him, as they've become the trademark. Kevin Retzer, 196 at Europcar. It's tough, this climb now. We're starting to slowly but surely scramble up this Côte de Forges. Also there over on the far side, Rory Sutherland, his job done for the day. He's trying to set it up for his teammate Roman Kreuziger. That's what it's all about, sacrificing yourself for the teammate and the team leader. Also slipping away now there, you can see Bram tanking. That's a bit of a surprise for Belkin. Obviously not the man with the gas.
Excuse me. Okay, just waiting for Chris now. He's two lads behind me, South Afro, and then I'm going to pace him down the descent. Okay, so although I've lost about 5 places or so, not really too worried because I still got to the summit uh, about 12th or 13th place, I think. Can't really remember, I wasn't paying much attention. So this is the recovery section. So we're going to finish this on a sprint for about 250 metres out, unless Chris leaves a bit earlier than me. Right here. Okay, now when you look at the speed we're doing now, okay, and they look at the Strava leaderboard, there'll be people who've done the climb as fast as this descent, but they weigh about 10 kilos, and I've actually killed about 800. I wonder if we catch up to that rider ahead, that Rico, can't really make out. I wonder if we can catch up to him. Okay, I need to be tactical now because Chris is able to counter my short range attacks. Oh, what the hell, what a bloody sprint. Hell yeah. Oh, perfect timing. I wonder if that's my all-time best power. So you saw 943 when I looked up, but I'd started to maybe slow down a little bit then. So it was at 18 or 19 watts per kilo. Bloody hell. A few weeks ago, I think 16 was my limit. Jeez. That's a thing like track sprinters regularly do, like over 2000 watts. Obviously, their legs are bigger than my waist. Okay, so I lost what a couple of places. Should have been 12th or 13th, but I decided to hang around and wait. But then, if I'd carried on with without waiting for Chris, then would I have done that sprint at the end? Maybe not.
little bit deeper as well. Santa Morita's in the group, her national champion of Italy. Orica Green Edge. There's 3 riders now moving clear. Where is Philippe Gilbert? Where's the move going to come from? Pierre Roland looks over his shoulder for a little bit of assistance. None coming, thank you. Kreuziger realizes 16 seconds is the gap. Moreno just a little bit further back. Nibali looking very good there. Well, Pozzovivo and Arredondo have got a 16-second advantage. There is Philippe Gilbert now coming across the gap in the red and black jersey. He says, this is the time I need to join the big boys at the front of a bike race like this, and so too is Alejandro Valverde. And Kreuziger goes again out of the saddle. Huge gear he's turning over, but you can see they're starting to pull clear. There's not many men left. It's fracturing at the front. 16 kilometers, 10 miles of racing left to go. Kreuziger. But as they all look at each other, the remnants of the main field start to come back. 2 leaders now. They can take advantage of this marking. Pozzovivo looking over his shoulder. 15 kilometers to go to the finish. Again, another move coming as Europcar throw their spice into the move here. It's a huge group that's going to line itself up to the final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. It's only a kilometer long, but it's steep. There's 48 riders in that leading group, and it's still holding at 12 to 14 seconds. They're still hovering around there. In that group, all the pre-race, big pre-race favourites are still there. Gilbert, Nibali, Kreuziger, Moreno. So the chasing group is 48 riders in strength. There's good collaboration between the 2 leaders, but what's it going to do to them once they come to the Côte de Saint-Nicolas? In between these 2 climbs, the Côte de la Rochefoucauld and Saint-Nicolas, you can leave so much energy. That energy can just disappear once you come to the next climb of the day. We're on the far side. Peter Weening is still in there for Orica Green Edge. There's the leader, Thomas Voeckler, on the back of Europcar, just jumping over a little pothole in the road there. Voeckler waiting. He knows that he needs to bide his time in a race like this. There's no organisation in this group now, which is 48 riders strong. A lot of teams and a lot of the big favourites have a number of teammates up alongside them. There's strength in numbers, and that could be what's going to pay at the end of the day. Astana will be happy to see the performance of Vincenzo Nibali. Let's have a look at the speed. We're looking at about 80 kilometers an hour there for the 2 leaders. It's hovering 12, 13 seconds, 13 kilometers to go. They're coming down now. They're coming through the town of Serin. Once they come through Serin, that'll be about 12, 13 kilometers to go. Once they drop here, they'll come across the river Meuse, and then they'll go through the back streets past the stadium of the famous Standard Liège, a football club that's been around for 116 years. It first started in 1898. That's 6 years after the first Liège-Bastogne-Liège was ever organised. 11 seconds is the gap to the 2 leaders. Big names in that group. It's all a question now who's got it to put it on the line for this final climb of the day. 12 kilometers. Well, there is the football ground I was just talking about, Standard Liège. And now, well, look at that. That 10 seconds has been wiped away very, very quickly, because here are the 2 leaders. Pozzovivo in second position, trying as best as he can to get an energy bar into his system. With Arredondo of Trek Factory Racing, it's all back together. There are 50 riders now. as we look at 11 kilometers to go in the 100th edition of a Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Well, Pozzovivo and Arredondo are back in the main field, and now we go past the old steel mills, the steel factories, which made Liège a very famous industrial centre at one stage. Now into the heart of Italy, and the foreign workers who moved up from Italy to Belgium to find opportunities and settled down in Little Italy at the foot of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. Little did they realise that it would be made famous many, many years later by Liège-Bastogne-Liège. There is the river Meuse, or the Maas as it's called, at just about 26 kilometres away from here as it crosses the border into Holland. Battling to get to the front of the group there is Jérôme Coppel, Team Cofidis. Fast speeds now over the bridge, lining themselves up, as we see at the back there on the right hand side, Frank Schleck. Not the ideal position to be if you want to start the Côte de Saint-Nicolas in good stead at the front end of the main field. Movistar in the blue and lime green jerseys. These two riders now just sacrificing themselves, keeping the pace nice and high. They don't want any little moves to steal the chance of Alejandro Valverde to get the victory here. They will ride and bury themselves. Kwiatkowski is the rider in 5th position in the white and red. Well, Movistar are putting it all on the line now for Alejandro Valverde. They're round the back of the factories. Very shortly they'll start to see the Italian flags, but don't forget we are in Belgium, we're not in Italy. But there's a lot of Italians have moved to this suburb of Liège. Frank Schleck sitting on the back. Just in front of him, not too far away, is David de la Cruz of Team NetApp. The actions at the front. Movistar, those two riders, all they have to do now is race for that first corner, the corner to the right hand side. The speed now, they're touching their maximum for some of these riders in this group, the riders who are trying to place their leaders into a good position into that final corner for the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. Their race pretty much ends in about 3 kilometers time. They will race, they'll give everything they can to keep the pace nice and high.